You got lost souls redefining what's wrong and what's right. Blind men unable to tell between darkness and light.
Welcome to the Shining Light Podcast. This is Pastor Sam.
And Patrick,
And today, of course, we're going to be talking about what everybody's talking about, and that is the Netflix Cuties. And actually, when this comes out,
film.
Yeah, the film Cuties, not people who are cute and work for Netflix. You know, that's not what we're talking about here. And actually, by the time this comes out, it'll probably be a couple weeks after, and I think this is important.
Is it out yet?
Yeah, it's out.
Okay.
But I'm talking about when this podcast comes out.
Gotcha.
I think this is important to say because this is going to seem behind the times a little bit, but it's an important thing to say this. Our 24-hour news cycle is going to come around, and something else is going to be the righteous indignation. Let's not quit being mad about this film.
Yeah.
That's, let's still be upset about this. I mean, this is something that was absolutely grievous. It's egregious. It's terrible. I haven't watched the film. I will not watch the film, but I have the IMDb review here for us to look at. We've got the certification, and
I see some still photos of it.
Excuse me. I did see the preview of the thing. It was pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Netflix. They've done some pretty bad things as far as the things they've produced, but this is a new level of wickedness for even Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't care, of course. They're looking for ratings and money. They're going to put out whatever they can that can get an audience for them, and I guess this probably will. The degenerates and the pedophiles would probably like this show. This is the sort of thing they go for. But this is kind of openly putting this out there. You know, we've had the Jeffrey Epstein thing and ongoing allegations of high levels of government and even around the world, rich and powerful people involved in this very disgusting practice of pedophilia.
Right. And, before we get into this, there is something I think we need to talk about here. And this is not a prideful statement when I say it. In fact, I hope you hear the somberness in my voice. But for the true conservative movement, which and culture, which of course I think the Shining Light Podcast is part of that. In fact, that we've been leading in a lot of that stuff. We told you so.
Yeah. It's just a natural. When you look historically at these issues, they've always been there. In our culture, because we started as a Christian culture, these perversions had to be reintroduced to our culture and then move forward stealthily and now more out in the open. But we've talked about things like the Drag Queen Storybook Hour before, which is the homosexual community reaching out to children and trying to indoctrinate them and groom them towards that sort of a perversions.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
it's pedophilia. I mean,
it's what it is.
And the I told you so is when homosexuality came in, everybody just started off. And I remember this because this was the biggest debate of my youth. Okay, I mean, I remember in 2000, I don't remember if it was 2010 or late 2010 or early 2011. I remember it was the winter time there, going down to a debate at the state courthouse or the state house. Excuse me, not courthouse, but the state house there, and hearing this public debate because this was right about this time, and it was all of what everybody was saying was you have to tolerate. You have to have tolerance. You have to tolerate. You have to tolerance. Tolerance. All that kind of stuff. I remember reading the blog post from Prairie Lakes Baptist Church, or not Baptist Church, sorry, Prairie Lakes Church, or Prairie Fakes, or Prairie Meadows, whatever you want to call them, where Jesse Tink came out, one of the great hirelings of the Cedar Valley, comes out and says, we've lost the war of marriage. We just need to lay down. We just need to quit. We just need to stop fighting. I mean, I remember reading that.
Yeah.
And I know there's some people who probably actually know Jesse Tink and listen to that saying, "Oh man, you're being a jerk." Well, the guy's a pastor and he's sitting here and he was okay with homosexuality. We all warned him, and there's several warnings for all this kind of stuff that the slope is indeed slippery.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got homosexuality tolerance, then it's homosexuality acceptance. And by the way, if you don't accept homosexuality today, you're a bigot. Even if you don't, even if you tolerate it, but you don't accept it, you are a bigot.
So that acceptance turns into promotion of it.
Yes, and now it leads to the next thing. And it was a couple months ago, I think, at church. I presented that, I believe it was in Massachusetts. This has just popped in my mind, that there was a county that was allowing more than one spouse. More than one spouse.
yeah.
I don't remember if there was two.
I remember that.
Two women or two men, and I think it was a man and two women, if I remember correct. But more than one spouse, and now we're seeing here this huge push on pedophilia. But anything you want to say to that?
Well, in Cuties, of course, we're talking about they're appealing with little girls towards men, towards pedophiles.
Mm-hmm.
And the homosexual community is called pederasty. Pederasty? How do you say that? I just said it a while ago and I can't say it. Pederasty, which is pedophilia, but homosexual pedophilia. And that's been, as you were saying, that's been a big part of the homosexual movement, even though they've kept that on the low for quite a while. Mm-hmm. NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association, is an organization that promotes getting rid of the age of consent. So adult men can have,
What was that thing called?
NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association.
Somebody let that association get started. I mean, that's disgusting.
Yeah. It's been going for quite a while, actually. You may not have heard of it, but it is an actual organization. And the father of the gay rights movement in America, Harry Hay, was a guy that was heavily promoted.
I don't think you pronounced his last name right.
Hay? I'm not going to go that way. But he actively promoted including NAMBLA and all the gay pride marches, making it part of the public movement. Now, the more pragmatic-minded people in the movement said, no, let's get homosexuality between consenting adults mainstreamed first, and then we'll introduce these other things incrementally. Well, Hay didn't like that idea. Hay actually, at age 14, was... at age 9, he had his first homosexual relationship with a 12-year-old boy. By age 14, he was having sexual relations with a 25-year-old man. And throughout his adult life, he had a series of relationships with both males of age and underage males as well. So he was not just a proponent of it, he was a practitioner of this pedophilia, with homosexual pedophilia.
That's it's terrible. And of course, something that's been brought up within homosexual culture, and Robert Lopez brings this up quite a bit. A lot of homosexuals have been abused.
That's one of the major factors. A homosexual can't reproduce. So the way you groom and bring the next generation forward, they because I've heard people that have come out of that lifestyle talk about, they would sit around and joke about, this is grooming. We're when you have sex with these underage kids, you're pushing them towards that lifestyle. That first sexual experience sometimes is a deciding factor on which way you go, heterosexual or homosexual.
Well, and it's because the children, the reason why they target children, of course, is that children, they're not morally developed yet, and they don't understand these differences between right and wrong and good and evil. They don't really understand these things,
right?
And so it's easy to warp their moral bend, and that's why it's so important to protect your children. Mm-hmm. And that's why something like this is terrible, because Cuties, this movie Cuties, it's about 11-year-old dance girls.
Yeah, and I've seen some pictures, and these are little girls. I mean, they're 11 years old. They're still little girls, acting in provocative sexual ways to enticing ways for people that are attracted to that sort of thing.
Right. Well, let me read the IMDb comments on this, and this was obviously, like I said here, this information was taken a little bit before this podcast is going to come out. So some of the statistics I say, you're going to go and look there, and you're going to say, no, there's way more than that. To start off with, there are 621 people who have gone and reviewed this, which is a very high number, I believe, for that. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on IMDb, but I do use the parental guidance quite a bit. And so to go and to check out something, is it just a good shoot-up film, or is it a...
So the IMDb is a Christian, takes a Christian worldview and rates films. Is this correct?
No. It's a secular. This is
secular.
This is which is crazy when you start to
Wow, when you
look
look
this.
at it, it makes it even worse. Okay.
Right. So this is a secular thing. So this isn't even a Christian thing, but they do have parental guidelines on there.
Okay.
404 out of 621 found this to be severe in nature with sex and nudity.
Okay, under that category of sex and nudity.
Yeah. Now just stop. Okay. The vast majority is saying that this is, and not just a little bit, I mean, this is a fairly large sample size, are saying that this is severe.
Wow.
Secular place. This isn't the Baptist store. We're not talking about the difference between Bible man and Batman here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at here, this is the secular place is going and saying, no. We're totally secular. We're not about Christian stuff. This is severe in our mind.
That says a lot on a world that's pretty jaded.
Yeah. And so let me read these for you here. Children are watching pornography on a cell phone. Nothing is shown. These little girls are huddled around a phone and talking about what is going on. Now, I want to present this first of all, because some people might say, wait a minute, it says nothing is shown.
Mm-hmm.
Remember here, these are 11-year-old girls. Think about what this is being marketed towards, okay? This isn't a random show or a random movie that has an 11-year-old in it. This is where the key centric characters are 11-year-olds. This is being marketed towards children.
It is also indicative of how soon kids in the world today are exposed to the different mediums to this sort of thing.
Right, towards pornography.
Before we had the computers and the cell phones, I mean, it was like the magazines, the penthouses, the Playboys, that sort of thing that kids, maybe a kid at school would find his dad's collection and bring one to school. So you saw it that way. But realize now that all the different electronic devices your children have access today. And these people, these pedophiles and people that would promote this sort of thing that Cuties represents, they know about these things too. And they are reaching your children at younger and younger ages. That is horrifying.
Yeah, terrible. And I won't say the statistics. I can't remember it, so we'll just kind of move on here. But the second one it says here is 11-year-old girls dance in a highly sexualized manner. And that is the understatement of the century from what I've seen.
Yeah, and what I've heard that, it's who in image puts that on? I mean, the only people that want to see that sort of thing are these twisted pedophiles that they're obviously catering to with this Cuties film.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't want to describe it because it's just disgusting. And I mean, it's one of those things where we're not overreacting towards this. Like I said here, 404 out of 621, and it's probably much more who have reviewed it now, are saying that this is severe. The next one is frequent scenes.
Frequent. Not one scene, but frequent scenes.
Frequent scenes.
Okay.
Of 11-year-old girls dancing lewdly where the camera pans in and zooms in on the children's buttocks and midsection.
Now, what kind of a person would do that as a cameraman? Or what kind of a director would allow that cut in his film? Or how many of these scenes would you put in a film like this? What is the purpose?
The only thing it's
to tantalize the perverse desires of pedophiles.
Right. And this is, I think, a very fair point to bring up, and I've seen this brought up a couple different times. We should, and this is the best way I think that I've seen it put forth, we should be morally outraged that this movie was made. But we should be even more morally outraged that the parents took their children to this thing and auditioned and got them to do this.
It's the same thing as you can't have drag queen story time in a library if nobody shows up.
Right. Well, yeah.
What kind of a parent subjects their children to that or puts them in a show like this, letting them be portrayed in this light? What kind of a parent does that?
Well, and I'm gonna get off on a little bit of a...
Or let your kids do that.
Yeah, a rabbit trail here, okay? Because, so I as we did in a previous podcast, but we stood up, I've as a family and personally, I've stood up against DHS. And by the way, DHS back down, that's good. We're going to keep working those so that they can never do it again. Make it so that you can't put corporal punishment in there. But
That's what they were trying to do, is prohibit corporal punishment.
Right. I've been called a child beater. I've been called all sorts of nasty names, saying I'm a child abuser. I'm a wacko, psycho, right-wing, hyper conservative who should never be allowed to have children, and my children should be taken from me, and all this kind of stuff. Okay.
I've been told I should never reproduce. That went by a supposed friend to a liberal.
All I have to say is, look, people are morally outraged about spanking. In fact, I had somebody send me a spanking is sex abuse. Spanking a child is sex abuse. A bunch of stuff on that. And yet, if they're not morally outraged about this,
which is nothing but sexual exploitation of children.
Yeah, 11-year-olds. It's terrible. Not only are there frequent scenes of zoomed up on the children's buttocks and midsection, but then there's a scene where, this is disgusting, a scene where an 11-year-old girl dressed in a tank and panties is splashed with water and begins twerking in a frenzy kind of way. On her feet, bent over on her knees, and on her hands and knees. The camera zooms in on her buttocks, and she positions on all fours and twerks. That's pretty graphic description.
And where are these little girls seeing this stuff? They're seeing it from these, the words that come to my mind I'm not going to say. These females, pop stars in different things, the absolutely disgusting acts that they are putting on stage in their videos, in their concerts. This is where this twerking comes from, is people like that promoting it. And these little girls see that, and now they're emulating that, right? 11-year-old girls.
Right.
That's what happens when you, I'm trying to let your children view women of loose morals. And that's not the words I've been thinking about, but we're going to keep it on the up and up here.
Right.
These are not the sorts of role models you want for your kids. Watch what they're watching, listening to. And you know what? You're right as a parent. You're not their friend. They're your parent. You're the parent. Step in and keep your kids from that sort of garbage. They may look at it when they get older, but they certainly don't need to be seeing it right now when you're responsible for what they're watching.
Well, and I come back to this. I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but if not, if the leftists clip this one out, we'll have a heyday. One of the most impactful Sunday school classes I went to growing up was one where the guy who was teaching it, it was in the summer, and we had combined the teens and the young the adults, and he was talking about his week, and he said, I was confronted this week where somebody said, you know what, it sounds like you're brainwashing your children. And his response was, well, if I'm not brainwashing them, who is? And I'm not sitting here saying in the technical sense that we ought to brainwash our children, but the reality of it is that if you're not instilling values in your children, somebody else is instilling values in your children.
The world's certainly trying to.
Right. And it's going to be immorality. I mean, it is so important. And I mean, I'm just going to say it, if you're not homeschooling, you ought to really consider doing it in today's day and age.
Oh, yeah. The way that Satan has really got into America, that really caused the sorts of changes that we're seeing played out in our streets today, was through the education system. Because even dictators of the past, Lenin, Hitler, they all knew this. Give me control of the children, and I control the future. I control society now, and I control the future. And that's exactly what they've done. They focused their efforts in the education system to where the education system today, when you went to school, parents, it's not like it is today. If you saw the stuff going on in your school, maybe you have and you're kind of looking the other way because you don't want to see it. But let's go ahead and take a good hard look at it. What's primarily wrong with this country today? Well, the welfare system's broken or the immigration system broken. No, we have laws that take care of that kind of stuff. And there are some problems with the welfare system. Immigration, we need to just execute the laws as written. But what's broken in this country today is the education system, big time.
Right.
They're the ones that are warping your children for hours a day, weeks at a time, years at a time. Then you send them off to higher education where they get even more in-depth indoctrination into this stuff. And this is anti-God stuff. They're not teaching a Bible or a Christian worldview. They're teaching everything against those worldviews, everything but a Christian worldview. And this is where the kids are being sent to school. It's not school, it's indoctrination.
That's right. In fact, I was just talking to someone today, and they're telling me about a study that had gone and read, and it was talking about how much children in public school knew about World War II, and they were saying that they didn't know that the Holocaust had happened. They couldn't name a concentration camp, and all these kind of stuff. And
I didn't know who fought who, what the time frame of it was. None of that stuff.
Right. And the guy I'm talking to, he makes this observation, and boy, it's a good observation. He says, yes, our children can go and they learn how to put a banana or a banana on a condom on a banana, but they don't know what Auschwitz was.
Yeah.
And that's that's a major problem here in our world today. But if you're liking what you're hearing today on the Shining Light Podcast, go to theshininglightministries.com. Once again, that's theshininglightministries.com. There you can find all of our podcasts. You can find articles. You can find books to buy. You can get Social Injustice there, and soon you'll be able to get 5 Steps to Kill a Nation and also Darkened Pulpits. But we're going to continue talking a little bit here about Cuties and Netflix. And let's go over the certifications there. The certifications there at the bottom, because I do want to just drive this home how terrible this is. And then we're going to go and expose a social justice warrior who's trying way too hard at being a social justice warrior and has completely missed the mark here. But what's it rated in the United States, Patrick?
TV-MA.
What does that MA stand for? What do you think?
I don't know because I don't watch much TV.
Stands for mature. Stands for mature.
Okay.
That's what it stands for. So in Australia, it's mature 15 plus. Argentina 16, Canada TVMA, Mexico TVMA. The lowest rating I'm seeing here is 15.
Vietnam C18.
Yeah. NC 16 in Singapore. I would go ahead and tell you what it's rated in France because that would make a lot of sense. But I don't speak French, so I can't tell you that one because this movie was actually it's in French. It was made in France.
Was it really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
It makes sense why there's so much degeneracy there.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's get to exposing someone here. I don't even know how to start off with this because this is incredibly mind-boggling, disappointing. I remember my wife is the one who actually found this, so she was the head researcher on this one. Because it's somebody we know. It's a pastor we know.
In that Kansas City area?
Yeah, Kansas City area, News Story Church. It's a GARBC church, and I bring this up because our church is currently in the GARBC. Who knows how long we'll be in the GARBC with the way things are going, as it continues to capitulate to
culture.
And social justice. I mean, we've heard now at state meetings, why are your churches so white? That's what started off the Shining Light Ministries. That was the first article that you wrote.
Yep, I was going, hey, I got a book I'm writing. I really can't write an article, and you made me aware of that and said, hey, can you write? And I go, yeah, I can. And here we are.
Yeah,
because it got me wound up.
Yeah, it's incredible to go and to look at that. We've heard the year after, white evangelicals can't lament at the national meetings. I mean, the GARBC is heading in the wrong direction. If you're in the GARBC, you need to start speaking up now, or you need to start getting on a lifeboat and getting ready to leave. One of the two, but...
And we talked about maybe starting the regarb.
Yeah.
Your garb, but that's not good. You want to regarb.
Yeah, yeah. But I want to point this out because the Gospel Coalition got this one right. I mean, that's how crazy this is. When is the last time you agreed with the Gospel Coalition before this?
That would be never.
Great. I mean, that's basically how it's been.
We are aligned with the Gospel Coalition now. We expect money will be flowing into the Shining Light podcast because now of our official affiliation with the Gospel Coalition.
Well,
actually, it's a one and done, I think, but we'll see.
I think the Gospel Coalition needs to get more diverse. They don't have very many conservatives that write for them.
Christians. So
Yeah, or Christians. They
Yeah.
need to get more diverse.
Yeah.
That'll get us some heat. But this was by an assistant pastor at New Story Church down in Kansas City area. And this is what he says. This is a series of 3 tweets that he put out, actually put them over on Facebook too. And he says this, in defense of the film Cuties. First of all, that's, if anybody starts off a statement right there.
in defense of the film, of the pedophile exploitive film Cuties.
Right. The film that we just told you the certifications
Yeah.
for. We just told you how 400 out of 600 people said that this is severe in sexual nature, and then in description, it's all about 11-year-olds being sexualized. Okay. In defense of the film Cuties, says Jeremy Dykman, it decries the over-sexualization of children, the opposite of what it's accused of being. In criticism, okay. Well, first of all, here let's unpack his defense, and I will give him this here. I do believe his intention is correct, but the problem is that good intentions aren't good enough.
It decries the over-sexualization of children, the opposite what it's accused of being. So he's saying even though it's trying to criticize the over-sexualization of children, that it's being portrayed as something else. Maybe like what you and I are talking about it being portrayed as.
Yeah. Yeah, he's saying basically it's a whistleblower on the sexualization and the exploitation of children.
Now, I have never, and I haven't seen all the movies, but can you think of any movies ever that come out with scenes of children doing the things that this movie's doing? I'm trying to think. So there's never been a movie, not a mainstream movie. No doubt pedophiles have their own stuff. But there's never been a mainstream movie that comes out like this, broadcast on a broad platform like Netflix, that has the images that this thing contains, right? Can you think of any?
I can't think of any.
I can't either. So this is kind of groundbreaking in the fact that he's claiming it's the opposite of what's being accused, yet it is the movie that shows the things that we've never seen before in a movie.
Yeah. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me while we were reading this that, like,
yeah, like can you point,
it's criticizing
me
something
to
that's
more...
never been on video,
right?
Not in a mainstream movie. And now it's a mainstream movie. He's claiming it's trying to show that this is wrong. We've never seen this before in a mainstream movie until this. And the images, are, from what the reviews are saying, are over and over of these sorts of erotic child images.
Right. And don't get me wrong here. I do understand that there are children who are being over-sexualized. That's a problem. We're going to get to that in just a moment here as to how to deal with that. And it's not what Jeremy Dykman's saying. But yeah, his criticism, or his, not his criticism, but his defense of the film is that, hey, it's a blower. It's a whistleblower. Mm-hmm. It's saying, hey, look at this bad stuff's happening in the world. That's not what this film's about.
I could be a whistleblower, and we could talk like we're doing right now. We're not showing you any images, are we, to prove our point?
Right. And yeah, that's a good point. And I went over this in Sunday school at our church, and somebody pointed out, and this is actually the exact example that I thought of too, but he says, this is like getting somebody really drunk to tell them how bad it is to get drunk. Or getting drunk in front of them and saying, oh, this is why you shouldn't get drunk. That's what this guy's arguing to do. And that's what he's saying. At least
they're of a legal age to get drunk, you would think. These kids aren't.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But he does go into the criticism of it. And so I do want
in criticism, he follows up with.
Right. In criticism, it over-sexualizes children to point out over-sexualization of children. So he just undid his defense, in case you're curious. If you're a debater,
you just cut your own throat. You made a declarative statement, and then you just kicked yourself in the shin on it.
Right. So I do want to just point that out here. He undoes his defense, but don't worry, it gets worse. Parents, guardians, leaders, the world is different today than it was when we grew up. We have a responsibility to the younger generations to help them navigate the world that they are growing up in. Let's slow our righteous indignation to cancel Netflix, and especially in the church. Let's stop avoiding talking about sex, porn, and the dangers of social media comparison. Let's have the hard, awkward conversations and walk with them through this new world. Parents, guardians, leaders, this is on us. This generation needs us.
Now, as I read what he's saying here, if you go back to the Shining Light podcast, the different topics we've taken on, we have taken on the addiction of pornography in this country, both inside and outside the church. We have talked about fornication. We've described that for the sin that it is, and adultery, and homosexuality. The different sexual sins, we've been over all those things, Mr. Dykeman. And guess what? We did not use any sorts of provocative images to make our points. We talked about them from a biblical point of view. The Bible does talk about fornication, does talk about adultery, does talk about homosexuality, talks about bestiality, talks about all these different things. So if we can keep that within a biblical context, I think we've got something here. But this film is actually part of the problem. It is not a solution.
Right. Well, and here's the problem that he's missing too here, just in the logical sense. He's saying, let's not cut off the source to fight this problem.
Let's slow our righteous indignation to cancel Netflix.
Right. So let me put it this way. This is the equivalent of saying, let's keep our membership to a porno site while we fight pornography.
That's so we can research the pornography that we're going to be watching at the porno site, so we have a better understanding of what all is going on in the pornographic world. Yeah, does that make any sense?
No, it doesn't make any sense.
Not any Christian sense. It makes maybe some worldly sense.
Right, and there's just a few verses that came to mind here when this whole issue came up. The first one is in Luke chapter 18, verses 15 through 17, and it says this: Then they also brought infants to him, Jesus, that he might touch them. But when the disciples saw it, they rebuked them. But Jesus called them to him and said, Let the children come to me, and do not forbid them, for such is the kingdom of God. Assuredly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will by no means enter it. The reason this came to mind is Jesus puts an emphasis on children. He loves children, and it continues with this.
They're not to be ignored. They're not to be devalued because of being
He puts a value on children. In Matthew 18, verses 6 through 7, it says this: But whoever causes one of these little ones who believes in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck, and he were to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come, but woe to the man by whom the offenses comes. Now, there's a couple things I want to point out about this. First of all, Jesus is serious when it comes to offending children, okay? It's a serious deal. He says, look, it's better that you weren't born. It's better that you have a millstone hung around your neck.
Have you ever seen a millstone?
It's pretty big.
I saw a millstone when we were in Israel. They're huge. And we actually saw a millstone. So they were talking about, when you're talking about a millstone, you're talking about an extraordinarily heavy stone. I mean, you could not pick it up. Several men could not pick it up. That's what Jesus is saying should be tied around your neck and you're thrown in the depths of the sea. There's no... Wow. The point there is there's no escaping that millstone. None. Right.
And he says this too: Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come, but woe to the man by whom the offenses come. In that phrase right there undoes Jeremy Dykeman's assessment, because Jeremy Dykeman is saying, look, there's sin in the world. There's sin in the world, and so we have to navigate. We have to navigate sin. We got to go and kind of be around sin, and you got to be able to relate to people and all this other kind of stuff, silly stuff. What Jesus says, yep, there's sin in the world, but that doesn't get people out of the woe.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you deal with this? Woe to you.
Yeah, that's a pointed warning.
And in the next thing that he says here, or the next passage of scripture that I have is this. Romans 12:9, and then also verse 21 says, Let love be without hypocrisy, abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. The big argument that Jeremy Dykeman is having, and I'm assuming if he has this, there's other pastors out there, maybe it's your pastor, I hope not, leave that church if it is, who's going and defending Cuties this way. They're basically saying, we have to love people in spite of their sin. And they try to go and say, and we do that then by partaking in their sin and enabling sin. By the way, when you become an enabler of that sin if you pay a monthly fee to Netflix.
So, and some people are going to rationalize this, saying, well, you know what? I don't pay Netflix to see Cuties. I pay Netflix for the good things I watch on there, whether they're good or bad. That's what they're paying them for. But realize, when you're paying Netflix, you're paying Netflix. Netflix is a compilation of all those things on there. There's some other rotten stuff on Netflix, none quite like this, but some other bad things on Netflix. So you have to decide and choose, am I going, because when you're supporting Netflix, you are, in fact, supporting Cuties.
Right.
So, again, just like some of the stuff happening on TV today, some of the people you may listen to their music, some of the sports teams that are in leagues that are supporting this communist movement, this insurrectionist movement of Black Lives Matter, you have to decide what's more important to me, my entertainment or my faith.
That's right. And it says here, let love be without hypocrisy. So what is it saying? There is a thing called hypocritical love. And a hypocritical love is something that doesn't call out what's evil. Because it goes and it defines what real love is. It is to abhor what is evil and to cling to what is good.
Can you do both those at the same time?
You have to do both those at the same time.
Okay.
You can't rightly abhor evil without clinging to good, and you can't rightly cling to good without abhorring evil.
So those two are linked.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing one, you got to be doing the other. You should be doing the other. So, can you do just want to be right? Can you cleave that's good? But if you're cleaving to only that which is good, then if you're cleaving to evil, then you're not clinging to that which is good. You're clinging to everything.
Right.
So, yeah, the Bible's not ambiguous on this, is it?
No. And ultimately, we're called to overcome evil, but not by evil. Or not be overcome by evil. We're to overcome evil with good. You don't go and overcome evil by bowing down to it, by compromising with it. You overcome evil by bringing good into it.
And sometimes taking a principled stand by saying, Netflix, we're canceling our subscription. And a lot of people, there's a movement doing this right now. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people doing this. And the interesting thing is, once upon a time, businesses were kind of guided by what does the customer want. If the customer won't put up with this, we're not going to do it. But it's interesting today that there are businesses, and I think of Target in particular, and there's several other businesses like that, big companies, that say, we're going to stick to this social justice concept of things. And if you don't like it, take your business elsewhere. Facebook's another one, all these different ones. Mm-hmm. They don't care if it's causing them. It shows you how corrupt the world has gotten. They don't care about the bottom line anymore. They care more about agenda. You know why they can do that? Because there's not enough principled people that will take the stand and stop supporting them. That's the sad fact of the matter.
Right.
They're counting on most people continuing to put their money into them.
Right. But, you know, I think the best way to end this podcast is simply by asking you, what's your middle name?
No compromise with evil.
That's what you ought to do. For the Shine Light Podcast, this is Pastor Sam.
And Patrick, no compromise with evil Wyett.
Have a great day.